Sarah Martinez stepped off the military transport bus at Naval Base San Diego, her simple uniform blending seamlessly with the dozens of other new arrivals. She carried a worn duffel bag and kept her head down, avoiding eye contact with the senior officers who were observing the incoming personnel. To everyone watching, she appeared to be just another young sailor beginning her naval career. The reception area buzzed with nervous energy as new recruits shuffled through processing lines. Sarah quietly joined the queue, listening to the chatter around her. Young men and women spoke excitedly about their assignments, their fears about boot camp, and their dreams of serving their country. She remained silent, occasionally nodding when spoken to but offering little about herself. Commander Williams, the base's personnel officer, barely glanced at Sarah's paperwork when she reached his desk. Her documents showed a standard transfer from a training facility, nothing remarkable or noteworthy. He stamped her forms with practiced efficiency, assigned her to Barracks C, and handed her a schedule for orientation activities. Sarah thanked him politely and moved on, just another face in the crowd. The barracks assignment placed her in a room with 3 other new sailors: Jessica, a bubbly communications specialist from Ohio; Marcus, a serious engineering student from Texas; and David, a former college athlete who had joined seeking adventure. They welcomed Sarah warmly, assuming she was fresh out of basic training like themselves. She didn't correct their assumption, instead listening to their stories while sharing very little about her own background. During the evening meal in the mess hall, Sarah sat with her new roommates and observed the base's social dynamics. She watched how junior officers interacted with senior staff, noted the chain of command in action, and mentally cataloged the personalities of key personnel. Her roommates mistook her quiet observation for shyness, often trying to draw her into conversations about their upcoming assignments and training schedules. Lieutenant Rodriguez, a junior officer responsible for overseeing new arrivals, addressed their group after dinner. He outlined the base's rules, expectations, and the importance of following proper military protocol. Sarah listened attentively, occasionally asking thoughtful questions that surprised Rodriguez with their depth and understanding of naval operations. He made a mental note that this particular recruit seemed unusually well-informed for someone supposedly new to military life. As lights out approached, Sarah's roommates continued chatting about their first day. Jessica worried about making a good impression on her superiors. Marcus discussed his technical training goals, and David shared his excitement about potential overseas deployments. Sarah contributed minimally to the conversation, claiming fatigue from the long journey to the base. In reality, she was processing everything she had observed and planning her next moves carefully. That night, while her roommates slept, Sarah lay awake thinking about the weeks ahead. She had specific objectives to accomplish at this base, but maintaining her cover as an ordinary newcomer was essential to her mission's success. The challenge would be balancing her need to gather information and assess personnel while appearing to be just another sailor, learning the ropes. The following morning brought their first full day of orientation activities. Sarah joined the group as they toured the base facilities, visited different departments, and met various officers. She asked appropriate questions for someone in her supposed position, while carefully studying the base's operations, security protocols, and personnel capabilities. Her military bearing was natural, but not so polished as to attract unwanted attention. During a break between orientation sessions, Sarah found herself in conversation with Chief Petty Officer Johnson, a veteran sailor with 20 years of experience. He had been observing the new arrivals and was impressed by Sarah's composure and intelligent questions. When he asked about her background, she provided a carefully prepared story about growing up in a military family and developing an early interest in naval service. Chief Johnson's experience told him there was something different about this particular recruit, but he couldn't quite identify what it was. Sarah's knowledge seemed deeper than expected, her questions more sophisticated, and her bearing more confident than typical new arrivals. However, her paperwork was in order, and she conducted herself appropriately for someone in her position. The first week passed smoothly as Sarah settled into the routine of base life. She participated in mandatory training sessions, completed assigned duties, and gradually built relationships with fellow personnel. Her roommates had fully accepted her as one of their group, often seeking her advice on military matters due to her apparent natural understanding of naval protocols and procedures. Sarah's careful observation during this initial period revealed several areas of concern regarding base security and operational efficiency. She noted gaps in communication between departments, inconsistencies in security protocols, and potential weaknesses in the base's defensive capabilities. However, she could not yet act on these observations without revealing her true identity and purpose. Then the challenge of maintaining her cover became more complex as senior officers began to notice her exceptional performance during training, exercises, and her insightful contributions to group discussions. Several instructors commented privately about the unusual competence displayed by this supposedly inexperienced sailor, but none questioned her background directly. As the second week approached, Sarah knew her situation was becoming more delicate. Her mission required her to eventually reveal her true identity and assume her proper role, but the timing had to be perfect. Too early, and she might miss crucial information about the base's actual operations. Too late, and questions about her deception might arise. For now, she would continue playing the role of Sarah Martinez, the newcomer, while quietly preparing for the moment when Admiral Sarah Martinez would step forward to take command. The morning alarm sounded at 500 hours, jolting Sarah's roommates from their sleep. She was already awake, having spent the early hours reviewing classified intelligence reports on her secured personal device. As Jessica, Marcus, and David groggily prepared for another day of orientation activities, Sarah quickly concealed her device and joined their morning routine, maintaining the facade of being just another tired recruit. Breakfast in the mess hall provided another opportunity for observation. Sarah noticed the informal networks that existed among the base personnel, the way information flowed between different ranks, and the underlying tensions that existed within certain departments. She mentally cataloged these dynamics while engaging in light conversation with her tablemates about the upcoming training schedule. The day's activities included a comprehensive tour of the base's communications center, led by Lieutenant Commander Stevens. As they walked through the facility, Sarah observed outdated equipment, inefficient workflow patterns, and several security vulnerabilities that could compromise classified operations. Her technical questions impressed the tour guide, who remarked that she seemed unusually well-versed in communications technology for someone with her listed background. During a break, Sarah overheard a concerning conversation between two senior petty officers discussing problems with the base's early warning systems. Equipment failures had gone unreported for weeks due to bureaucratic delays and interdepartmental communication issues. She made mental notes while pretending to study a training manual, realizing that these systemic problems posed serious risks to base security. The afternoon brought defensive training exercises in which all personnel participated, regardless of rank or experience level. Sarah found herself grouped with other new arrivals under the supervision of Gunnery Sergeant Peterson, a decorated veteran known for his demanding standards. As the exercises began, Sarah faced a critical challenge, performing well enough to avoid suspicion while not displaying the advanced tactical knowledge she possessed. She carefully modulated her performance, showing competence appropriate for someone with basic military training, while occasionally making deliberate minor mistakes to maintain her cover. However, when a simulated emergency scenario began, her instincts took over. She quickly assessed the tactical situation, identified the optimal defensive positions, and began coordinating her team's response with remarkable efficiency. Gunnery Sergeant Peterson watched in amazement as this supposed newcomer demonstrated tactical awareness that exceeded many of his experienced soldiers. Her movements were precise, her commands clear, and her strategic thinking sophisticated. When the exercise concluded, he pulled her aside for a private conversation about her background and training experience. Sarah deflected his questions skillfully, attributing her performance to extensive studying of military tactics and a natural aptitude for strategic thinking. She mentioned growing up around military bases and absorbing knowledge through observation and reading. Peterson remained skeptical but had no concrete reason to question her story, especially given her official paperwork and assignment records. That evening, word of Sarah's impressive performance had spread among the training staff. Several instructors began paying closer attention to her activities, curious about this recruit who seemed to possess knowledge and skills beyond her supposed experience level. Chief Johnson approached her after dinner, engaging in casual conversation while probing for more details about her past. Sarah navigated these conversations carefully, providing consistent answers to questions about her background, while gradually steering discussions toward base operations and personnel. She learned valuable information about morale issues, resource shortages, and concerns about the base's readiness for potential threats. Her questioners saw her interest as natural curiosity from an eager new sailor. The increasing attention from senior personnel created new challenges for maintaining her cover. Sarah realized that her exceptional performance was drawing exactly the kind of scrutiny she needed to avoid. She began deliberately making more mistakes during training, asking basic questions she already knew the answers to, and generally toning down her competence to match expectations for someone in her position. Meanwhile, her roommates had begun relying on her for guidance and support, seeing her as the most capable member of their group. Jessica sought her advice about dealing with homesickness. Marcus asked for help understanding complex technical manuals, and David wanted her opinion on different career specializations within the Navy. These relationships, while complicating her mission, provided valuable insights into the experiences of genuine new personnel. During a late-night conversation in their quarters, David mentioned overhearing senior officers discussing upcoming changes in base leadership. Apparently, a new commanding officer would be arriving soon, someone with an impressive record who was expected to implement significant reforms. The current leadership seemed anxious about this transition, unsure what changes might be coming. Sarah listened to this information with particular interest, knowing more about these leadership changes than she could reveal. The timeline for her mission was becoming clearer, and she would need to maintain her cover for only a few more days before circumstances would force her to reveal her true identity. The challenge would be using this remaining time effectively, while avoiding any situations that might compromise her position. The next morning brought news that would test her ability to maintain her facade. Base security had detected unusual activity in the surrounding area, and all personnel were placed on heightened alert status. Sarah found herself assigned to monitoring duty alongside other junior personnel, a position that would require her to observe and report on potential threats, while pretending to have no special knowledge or authority. As she took her assigned position, Sarah realized that the coming days would present her greatest challenge yet. The heightened security situation would likely reveal more of the base's weaknesses and problems, information she needed for her mission. However, it would also place her in situations where her natural leadership instincts and extensive training might be difficult to conceal. The careful balance she had maintained between competence and anonymity was about to face its ultimate test. The heightened security alert transformed the atmosphere at Naval Base San Diego overnight. Sarah reported to her assigned monitoring station at dawn, joining a team of junior personnel tasked with watching the perimeter through surveillance equipment. The tension was palpable as reports filtered in about suspicious vessels detected offshore and unidentified aircraft spotted in the restricted airspace. Petty Officer Thompson, supervising the monitoring team, briefed them on their responsibilities with obvious nervousness. He was young for his position, recently promoted and clearly feeling overwhelmed by the security situation. Sarah observed his uncertainty while maintaining her role as an attentive but inexperienced team member, asking appropriate questions about the surveillance equipment and protocols. As the morning progressed, Sarah noticed critical flaws in the base's security response. Communication delays between monitoring stations were causing dangerous gaps in coverage. Equipment malfunctions went unreported for too long, because personnel feared being blamed for technical problems. Most concerning, the coordination between different security teams was practically non-existent, with each group operating independently, rather than as part of a unified defense strategy. When Petty Officer Thompson stepped away to report to his superiors, Sarah found herself temporarily in charge of the monitoring station. A junior sailor named Collins noticed an unusual pattern on his screen, but hesitated to report it, unsure whether it represented a genuine threat or equipment malfunction. Sarah quickly assessed the readings and realized they indicated potential infiltration along the eastern perimeter. Acting on instinct, she began coordinating an appropriate response, directing Collins to verify the readings through secondary systems, while instructing another team member to alert the patrol units in that sector. Her commands were clear and efficient, her tactical assessment accurate, and her response time exceptional. Within minutes, she had organized a proper investigation of the potential threat, The situation escalated when the patrol unit confirmed unauthorized personnel attempting to breach the perimeter fence. Sarah found herself coordinating multiple teams as Petty Officer Thompson remained absent, apparently struggling to navigate the bureaucratic channels required to report the incident. Her natural command presence took over as she directed resources to contain the situation while ensuring proper backup and communication. Lieutenant Rodriguez arrived at the monitoring station to find Sarah effectively running the operation. He was amazed to discover that this supposed newcomer had identified the threat, coordinated the response, and was successfully managing multiple teams simultaneously. Her performance was that of an experienced officer, not a recent recruit, and he immediately began questioning how someone with her official background could demonstrate such advanced capabilities. Sarah realized her cover was seriously compromised but had to prioritize the immediate security threat. She continued directing the response while preparing explanations for her actions, knowing that her exceptional performance had revealed far more about her true abilities than she intended. The successful neutralization of the infiltration attempt came at the cost of maintaining her carefully constructed identity. When Petty Officer Thompson finally returned with senior officers in tow, he found the situation already resolved, and Sarah completing a detailed incident report that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of military procedures and security protocols. Her documentation was thorough, professional, and written with the expertise of someone far above her supposed rank and experience level. Commander Williams, who had initially processed Sarah's arrival paperwork, was among the officers reviewing the incident. He studied her report with growing confusion, comparing her demonstrated capabilities with her official record. Her performance during the security crisis had been exemplary, showing leadership skills and tactical knowledge that contradicted everything in her personnel file. The afternoon brought increasingly direct questions about Sarah's background and training. Chief Johnson, who had suspected something unusual about her from the beginning, was assigned to conduct a thorough review of her records and interview her about the morning's events. Sarah prepared for this interview carefully, knowing she could no longer maintain her cover story without raising serious credibility issues. During the interview, Sarah provided carefully crafted responses that acknowledged her exceptional performance while attributing it to extensive self-study, natural aptitude, and adrenaline-driven quick thinking during the crisis. She maintained that her actions were instinctive reactions to an emergency situation, rather than evidence of advanced training or experience beyond what was documented in her files. Chief Johnson's experience told him that Sarah's explanations, while plausible, didn't fully account for the sophistication of her tactical thinking and leadership during the incident. Her coordination of multiple teams, understanding of security protocols, and ability to produce professional documentation suggested training and experience far beyond what any recruit should possess, regardless of natural talent or self-study. Meanwhile, Sarah's roommates were buzzing with excitement about her heroic actions during the security alert. Jessica, Marcus, and David couldn't stop talking about how their quiet roommate had taken charge and successfully handled a real crisis. Their admiration was genuine, but their questions about how she knew what to do were becoming increasingly difficult to answer. Convincingly, the evening briefing included recognition of Sarah's outstanding performance during the security incident. Base leadership publicly commended her quick thinking and effective response, while privately questioning how someone with her official background had demonstrated such advanced capabilities. The praise was gratifying but dangerous, as it focused unwanted attention on the discrepancies in her cover story. That night, Sarah lay awake knowing her situation had fundamentally changed. Her cover was severely compromised, and continuing to maintain the deception would likely raise more suspicions than revealing the truth. However, her mission was not yet complete, and premature disclosure of her identity could jeopardize important objectives she still needed to accomplish. The next morning brought word that Higher Command was sending investigators to review the security incident and assess the base's overall readiness. Sarah realized that these investigators would likely include people who knew her true identity, making continued deception impossible. The time was approaching when Admiral Sarah Martinez would have to step forward, but she needed to manage that revelation carefully to minimize damage to her mission and the base's operations. As she prepared for another day of maintaining her increasingly fragile cover, Sarah reflected on the valuable intelligence she had gathered about the base's strengths and weaknesses. The security incident had revealed critical problems that needed immediate attention, but addressing them would require her to assume her proper authority. The careful balance between mission objectives and operational security was about to shift dramatically. The investigation team from Naval Command arrived at 800 hours in 3 black vehicles, their presence immediately creating a buzz of nervous energy throughout the base. Sarah watched from her assigned duty station as senior officers in crisp uniforms emerged from the vehicles, knowing that among them was Captain Reynolds, her longtime colleague who would instantly recognize her. Her heart raced as she realized the moment of truth was rapidly approaching. Commander Williams rushed to greet the investigating team, clearly anxious about the scrutiny his base was about to receive. Sarah observed the interactions from a distance, noting the formal exchanges and the serious expressions of the investigators as they were briefed on the recent security incident. She knew they would want to interview her as the person who had coordinated the response, making her continued deception practically impossible. Lieutenant Rodriguez approached Sarah's station with instructions that confirmed her fears. She was to report immediately to the base commander's office for questioning by the investigation team. As she walked across the base, Sarah mentally prepared for the conversation that would end her undercover mission and potentially complicate her broader objectives. The weight of maintaining her cover for these final crucial hours felt overwhelming. The base commander's office was filled with senior officers when Sarah arrived. She recognized several faces from her years of service at higher levels of command, though she maintained her composed demeanor of a junior sailor reporting as ordered. Captain Reynolds looked up from his briefing documents as she entered, and she saw the flash of recognition in his eyes before he quickly composed himself to maintain the situation's integrity. Colonel Harrison, leading the investigation, began with routine questions about the security incident. Sarah provided detailed answers that demonstrated her knowledge and capabilities, while still attempting to maintain some elements of her cover story. However, as the questions became more technical and specific, the impossibility of concealing her true expertise became increasingly apparent to everyone in the room. The turning point came when Colonel Harrison asked about her assessment of the base's overall security posture. Sarah's response was comprehensive, professional, and demonstrated understanding of strategic concepts far beyond what any recruit should possess. She discussed force readiness, threat assessment methodologies, and operational security protocols with the fluency of an experienced officer, not someone supposedly new to military service. Captain Reynolds exchanged meaningful glances with Colonel Harrison, and Sarah realized the charade was effectively over. Her performance during the interview had revealed capabilities that could not be explained by any reasonable cover story. The investigators knew they were dealing with someone far more experienced and knowledgeable than her paperwork suggested, and continued deception would only create additional complications. Commander Williams watched the proceedings with growing confusion as this supposed new recruit discussed complex military operations with sophistication that exceeded many of his senior staff members. Her analysis of the security incident was more thorough than the reports he had received from his experienced officers, and her recommendations showed strategic thinking that seemed impossibly advanced for someone in her position. When Colonel Harrison asked directly about her actual background and training, Sarah faced the decision she had been dreading. Continuing to lie would potentially compromise the investigation and damage relationships with officers who would soon discover the truth anyway. However, revealing her identity prematurely might jeopardize the remaining objectives of her mission and create unnecessary complications. Sarah took a deep breath and made her choice. She requested a private conversation with Captain Reynolds, claiming she had sensitive information relevant to the investigation that required careful handling. The other officers were asked to step outside, leaving Sarah alone with Reynolds, who had been waiting for this moment since entering the room and recognizing his colleague beneath the simple uniform. The reunion was brief but emotional, as Captain Reynolds expressed his relief at finally being able to acknowledge her presence openly. Sarah quickly explained the nature of her undercover mission, the intelligence she had gathered, and the critical security issues she had identified during her weeks at the base. Her assessment painted a concerning picture of systemic problems that required immediate attention. Captain Reynolds listened intently as Sarah outlined the communication failures, equipment deficiencies, and personnel issues she had observed. Her insider's perspective had revealed problems that traditional inspections might have missed, providing valuable intelligence about the base's actual operational readiness. The security incident had been just one manifestation of deeper systemic weaknesses that needed addressing. The challenge now was managing the revelation of her identity to the base personnel in a way that would minimize disruption while maximizing the effectiveness of necessary reforms. Sarah had built relationships and gathered trust during her time undercover, and that credibility could be valuable in implementing changes if handled properly. However, the shock of discovering her true identity could also damage morale and create resentment. When the other officers were invited back into the room, Captain Reynolds announced that Sarah's actual identity would be revealed shortly, but that her presence at the base had been part of an authorized assessment mission, rather than any form of deception or investigation into wrongdoing. This framing was designed to minimize defensiveness while acknowledging the unconventional nature of her evaluation methods. Sarah's roommates were among the first to learn the truth when she was asked to collect her personal belongings from the barracks. Jessica, Marcus, and David stared in shock as she explained that she was actually Admiral Sarah Martinez, temporarily assigned to assess the base's operations. Their initial reaction was disbelief, followed by embarrassment about treating a senior officer as their peer. The news spread rapidly throughout the base as word of the Admiral's presence became official. Personnel who had interacted with Sarah during her undercover period struggled to reconcile their memories of the quiet newcomer with the reality of her actual rank and position. Some felt honored to have worked alongside such a distinguished officer, while others worried about things they had said or done in her presence. Chief Johnson approached Sarah with a mixture of vindication and respect, noting that his instincts about her unusual capabilities had been correct. He expressed appreciation for the way she had conducted herself during the undercover period, maintaining appropriate behavior while gathering the information needed for her assessment. His years of experience had told him something was different about her from the beginning. As afternoon approached, Sarah prepared for the formal assumption of her proper role at the base. The transition from hidden observer to acknowledged leader would require careful management to maintain the trust and cooperation she would need to implement necessary improvements. The success of her mission now depended on how effectively she could use the insights gained during her time undercover to create positive changes in the base's operations. The transformation of Naval Base. San Diego's atmosphere was immediate and dramatic as news of Admiral Martinez's true identity spread throughout the facility. Personnel who had casually interacted with her during her undercover period now found themselves overwhelmed with anxiety about their previous behavior, wondering if their conversations and actions had been appropriate when unknowingly addressing such a high-ranking officer. Sarah's first official act was to call an all-hands meeting in the base's main auditorium. As she walked to the podium wearing her proper uniform with Admiral's insignia, the sight of the woman they had known as a simple newcomer now revealed, as one of the Navy's most respected leaders, created a buzz of whispered conversations throughout the assembled crowd. The transformation was so complete that some personnel struggled to believe they were seeing the same person. She began her address by acknowledging the unusual circumstances of her arrival and the understandable confusion her presence had created. Sarah explained that her undercover assessment had been authorized at the highest levels to gain genuine insights into the base's operations without the artificial adjustments that typically occur when leadership announces formal inspections. Her tone was professional but warm, seeking to ease the tension while establishing her authority. The Admiral's assessment of the base's strengths and weaknesses was delivered with precision and fairness. She praised the dedication and professionalism she had observed among personnel at all levels, specifically commending individuals who had demonstrated exceptional service during her time there. Chief Johnson, Gunnery Sergeant Peterson, and several others were recognized for their leadership and commitment to excellence. However, Sarah also addressed the serious deficiencies she had identified during her assessment: the communication failures that had compromised security responses, the equipment maintenance issues that had gone unaddressed, and the lack of coordination between departments all needed immediate attention. Her recommendations were specific and actionable, reflecting her deep understanding of the base's actual operational challenges. The personnel who had worked most closely with Sarah during her undercover period faced the greatest adjustment to this revelation. Her former roommates Jessica, Marcus, and David found themselves summoned to a private meeting where she addressed their concerns about having treated an admiral as their peer. She reassured them that their natural behavior had been exactly what she needed to observe, and their friendship had been genuine regardless of rank differences. Lieutenant Rodriguez struggled with embarrassment about having supervised Sarah during orientation activities, remembering moments when he had explained basic procedures to someone who clearly understood them better than he did. Sarah met with him privately to express appreciation for his professionalism and to discuss his observations about new personnel orientation processes, turning his discomfort into a valuable opportunity for operational improvement. Commander Williams faced the most significant challenge in adjusting to the new reality. As the officer who had initially processed Sarah's arrival without recognition, he worried about the implications for his career and the base's reputation. Sarah addressed his concerns directly, emphasizing that the success of her undercover mission reflected positively on the base's ability to integrate new personnel effectively, rather than indicating any failure on his part. The implementation of Sarah's recommended improvements began immediately. Communication protocols were updated to ensure faster information flow between departments. Equipment maintenance schedules were revised to address the backlog of unresolved issues. Most importantly, coordination procedures were established to ensure that security responses would be unified and efficient rather than fragmented across different units. Sarah's unique perspective from having observed the base's operations from the bottom up provided insights that traditional leadership assessments would have missed. She understood not just what policies existed on paper, but how they actually functioned in practice when implemented by junior personnel. This knowledge enabled her to design improvements that would be effective at the operational level where actual work gets accomplished. The base's personnel gradually adapted to working under their new commanding officer, though the adjustment period was complicated by the unusual circumstances of her arrival. Some officers who had initially been suspicious of the quiet newcomer now found themselves reporting to the same person, creating complex dynamics that required careful management to maintain effective working relationships. Sarah's leadership style emphasized the strengths she had observed during her undercover period, while addressing weaknesses through systematic improvements rather than punitive measures. She recognized that many of the problems she had identified resulted from systemic issues rather than individual failures, and her solutions focused on creating better structures and processes to support personnel in their duties. The security incident that had nearly exposed her cover became a case study for the improvements she implemented. The response procedures were analyzed in detail, with lessons learned integrated into new protocols that would ensure faster detection of threats and more coordinated responses. The experience demonstrated how individual competence could be leveraged more effectively through better organizational structures. Personnel who had worked with Sarah during the crisis found themselves valued as key contributors to the base's improved security posture. Collins, the junior sailor who had first detected the suspicious readings, was commended for his attention to detail and recommended for advanced training. His confidence grew as he realized his observations had been taken seriously and incorporated into improved procedures. The cultural changes at the base extended beyond operational improvements to include enhanced communication between different levels of command. Sarah's experience of observing the base from a junior perspective had shown her how information and concerns often failed to reach decision-makers effectively. She established new channels for upward communication and regular feedback mechanisms to ensure that operational realities informed policy decisions. Training programs were revised to incorporate the lessons learned from Sarah's assessment. New personnel orientation was enhanced to better prepare arrivals for their roles, while continuing education for existing staff was expanded to address knowledge gaps she had identified. The goal was creating a learning organization that could adapt and improve continuously, rather than relying solely on periodic external assessments. As her first month as revealed commanding officer progressed, Sarah reflected on the unique insights her undercover mission had provided. The experience of seeing the base through the eyes of junior personnel had given her perspectives that would inform her leadership decisions for years to come. the trust she had built during those initial weeks, once the shock of revelation passed, became a foundation for implementing changes that might otherwise have faced resistance. 6 months after the revelation of Admiral Martinez's true identity, Naval Base San Diego had transformed into one of the most efficiently operated installations in the Pacific Fleet. The improvements, implemented based on her undercover assessment, had not only addressed the immediate problems she identified, but had created a culture of continuous improvement that elevated performance across all departments. The communication systems that had once frustrated personnel with delays and breakdowns now operated with remarkable efficiency. The new protocols Sarah established ensured that information flowed seamlessly between departments, eliminating the dangerous gaps that had previously compromised security responses. The base became a model for other installations seeking to improve their operational coordination and effectiveness. Personnel who had initially struggled with the revelation of their commanding officer's unconventional arrival method now spoke proudly of their role in her assessment mission. Chief Johnson became something of a legend among enlisted personnel for being one of the few who had suspected something unusual about the quiet newcomer. His instincts and experience were now formally recognized through his appointment to a special advisory role in personnel evaluation. Sarah's former roommates had evolved into valuable members of her leadership team in unexpected ways. Jessica's natural communication skills led to her assignment as liaison between junior personnel and senior staff, ensuring that concerns and suggestions from all levels reached decision-makers effectively. Marcus applied his technical background to equipment maintenance oversight, while David's athletic leadership translated well into coordinating training programs. The success of the undercover assessment had attracted attention from Naval Command, leading to requests for Sarah to develop similar evaluation methods for other installations. Her unique approach of observing operations from the perspective of junior personnel had revealed insights that traditional inspections missed, providing a more complete picture of actual operational capabilities and challenges. Lieutenant Rodriguez had overcome his initial embarrassment about supervising an admiral during orientation to become one of Sarah's most trusted officers. His first-hand knowledge of her assessment methods and his genuine dedication to improving personnel integration made him invaluable in refining the base's training programs. His promotion to lieutenant commander reflected both his contributions and Sarah's confidence in his abilities. The security improvements implemented after the infiltration incident had been tested multiple times through exercises and real situations, consistently demonstrating their effectiveness. The coordinated response procedures Sarah developed had become standard practice throughout the Pacific Fleet, with other bases adopting similar protocols to enhance their defensive capabilities. Commander Williams had transformed from anxious uncertainty about his role in the Admiral's unconventional arrival to confident leadership of improved administrative operations. The organizational changes Sarah implemented had streamlined many of the bureaucratic processes that had previously hindered efficient operations, allowing him to focus on strategic planning rather than crisis management. The base's reputation for excellence began attracting high-quality personnel who specifically requested assignment there. Word had spread throughout the Navy about the innovative leadership and improved working conditions at San Diego, creating a positive cycle of recruitment that further enhanced operational capabilities. The base became a preferred assignment for ambitious officers seeking professional development opportunities. Sarah's leadership philosophy, informed by her unique perspective of having served at both the lowest and highest levels simultaneously, emphasized treating all personnel with respect while maintaining appropriate military discipline. Her experience of observing the base's operations from a junior viewpoint had given her insights into the daily challenges faced by enlisted personnel, enabling her to address problems that traditional leadership might overlook. The annual inspection by Pacific Fleet Command resulted in commendations across multiple categories, with particular praise for innovative leadership practices and operational excellence. The inspectors noted that personnel at all levels demonstrated exceptional competence and morale, reflecting effective leadership and well-designed organizational structures. The base received recognition as the fleet's premier installation. Training programs developed based on Sarah's assessment were now being implemented throughout the Navy, as examples of best practices. Her approach of combining traditional military structure with insights gained from ground-level observation had created methods that enhanced both operational effectiveness and personnel satisfaction. Naval academies began studying her leadership methods as case studies in innovative command. The relationships Sarah had built during her undercover period continued to provide valuable insights into the base's ongoing operations. Personnel who had known her as a peer before learning her true identity felt comfortable approaching her with concerns and suggestions, creating an unusually open communication environment that enhanced organizational learning and adaptation. The cultural transformation of the base extended beyond operational improvements to include enhanced pride and ownership among all personnel. Sailors at every level understood their role in the base's success and felt valued for their contributions. This sense of shared purpose and recognition created a positive working environment that supported both mission accomplishment and personal development. As Sarah reflected on the success of her unconventional approach to command, she recognized that the insights gained during those initial weeks undercover had provided her with perspectives that would inform her leadership decisions throughout her career. The experience had demonstrated the value of understanding organizations from multiple viewpoints and the importance of building trust and relationships across all levels of command. The base that had once struggled with communication failures, security vulnerabilities, and coordination problems had become a showcase of military excellence through leadership that combined traditional command authority with genuine understanding of operational realities. Admiral Martinez's legacy would extend far beyond Naval Base San Diego, influencing leadership practices throughout the Navy for years to come. The story of the newcomer who turned out to be the admiral in charge became part of Navy folklore, inspiring future leaders to seek innovative approaches to understanding and improving their organizations. Sarah's success demonstrated that effective leadership sometimes required setting aside the privileges of rank to gain authentic insights into the organizations they serve, creating better outcomes for both personnel and mission accomplishment.